Thank you for listening to We Have Ways of Making You Talk. Sign up to our Patreon to receive bonus content, live streams, and our weekly newsletter with money off books and museum visits as well, plus early access to all live show tickets. That's patreon.com/wehaveways. Achtung! Welcome to We Have Ways of Making You Talk, the Second World War podcast with me, Al Murray, and James Holland. Jim, how are you? Your book's out. Casino 44 is out.
Yeah, we're recording this on Tuesday, so it's always sort of anxious moments because Tuesday's when you get sales figures back, God,
today's the day, isn't it?
But anyway, so how are you? Or should I say a Renaissance man that you know of?
This is so funny. So last night I did the One show to talk about the Arnhem book because somehow it's...
This is the BBC One's flagship magazine show, goes out on the evening, every evening.
7 o'clock every night. It was the usual Monday sort of hurly-burly. So it started off with an item about mental health, a serious item about mental health. Then it's a very serious item about a breast cancer campaigner and the effort she'd gone to bring awareness to the issue of breast cancer. And then me talking about Arnhem Black Tuesday.
Which is obviously by far and away the most important bit of the whole show.
And then Camille Cabello, who sang Havana, plugging her new record. She was a delight. But basically what happened was they come to me. And when you go on the One show, they do the research chat. So the researcher rings you, asks you the questions, you give the answers. Then you go backstage, and I was in a much nicer dressing room.
Because these are nice people, they're not trying to catch you out.
Exactly. You're a
friend, not an enemy of the show.
Exactly. You're not on the Today programme, and they're asking, why is this lying bastard lying to me? And then I went in a much nicer dressing room than normal. They've got these new dressing rooms upstairs rather than the basement. And in fact, they did a very
weird... Where do they film it? Is it White City?
No, they film it at the building next to Broadcasting House. So it's part of the new Broadcasting House complex. But I've done it many, many times. I've hosted it a few times as well on a Friday or bank holidays when they get people in as holiday cover.
Right.
So I know my way around the place.
Friend of the show.
Exactly. But this time it was really funny. They send a car, and in the car they take you into the loading bay like you're the Beatles or something. Like
great.
Yeah. I mean,
all the girls are screaming outside.
There was no screaming. Let me put it.
There's no members of the Independent London IC waiting for you.
No.
Oh my God, it's Paul Davis and
screaming in their IC merch.
And Tom.
But and then the researcher who you've spoken to in the morning comes to see you to go through the questions again. They tell you what clips they're going to use, blah, 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 blah. And then you wait. And then you go on. And it's the usual thing. So how did you become interested in the story? And, you get your pat.
Well, it was my dad. And,
exactly. But you tell it like, well, it was my dad. And, and I remember in the cinema and he knew people who were there. And they just loved that. Anyway, right at the end, right towards the end of the interview, Alex Jones says to me, and, like I said, I've done the show several times, so I know her well enough to know that she's not there to catch you out, but also that you can have a little bit of fun. She goes, well, Al, it's a bit of a weird niche you've made yourself here. And I said, weird niche? I mean, I'm a Renaissance man, right? I'm an all-rounder. Couldn't you say that? Right? And then, so from then on, that was basically the running joke for the rest of the thing was like...
That's hilarious.
Do you mind? I think it's better
well,
than me.
I'm going to go and look it up in that case after this.
And then, anyway, so what happened, though, at the end of the interview, and this is the thing that keeps happening right now, right? At the end of the interview, someone emailed in while watching the programme. Right?
Dad?
My father.
No.
And the name of the name of her dad, was in 11th Battalion, the Parachute Regiment. And it's really important that people like Al are telling the story of what happened to those men. And I said...
And doing it properly, as a proper Renaissance man, not as some Johnny-come-lately niche person. Niche.
Well, thank you for getting in touch, because that's why I did the one day, is because 11 Para... It all happens to them on that one day, and then they kind of disappear from the way the story's told. They become, in the mass of people. That's why I've done the Tuesday, because their big day is the Tuesday sort of thing. But my inbox right now, please see a book recommendation. My father was in Arnhem. He ran an MC. Here's his book, A Sapper at Arnhem. Here's another perspective on this momentum story. Here's another one. Loads of it.
But you've also had a disgruntled American airborne guy.
Yeah, who says that we've been unfair on Jim Gavin.
How could I'm his biggest fan. How could he possibly say that? I have nothing but praise for Jim Gavin.
Well, no, it's quite interesting. He says Gavin's first combat action was in Sicily. The pivotal moment in that battle was in holding the high ground. At Normandy, his mentor, General Matthew Ridgway, President Gavin sent 82nd Airborne to hold the high ground. See, the thing is, yeah, he did. But the thing, and I think we've gone over this, the issue is the second lift. He's only hung up in the way he is. Because
of the second left, which is in the wrong place. Why isn't it not in drop zone? No.
Anyway, we've done that. But no, my manager's PA, we were just chatting about this, I keep getting this stuff now, is that what I need to do is announce what the next book is going to be now, so that I get the sodding emails now rather than once the damn thing's published. Because I'm sure all these accounts would just add more and more to it, even if it's just a line here, a line there, particularly the sappers, because they're not meant to be fighting and they end up fighting. So anyway, God damn it, where were you people 6 months ago?
I know. It's infuriating, isn't it? Absolutely infuriating. This is why you do need to announce early on all social media platforms and on podcast. So I'm going to say right now, it looks very likely that I am going to be doing the Atlantic War.
Oh, wow. Excellent.
But kind of end of 42, 43 up to the crushing of the wolf packs. Because obviously, I don't want us losing, having a bad time. I want us to end up, start in the dark days of winter of 43.
Yes, the winter.
January 1943. Anyway, so 42, 43 rather than 43, 44, because otherwise there'd be nothing to write about. I'm going up to the Donitz' record of the Wolfpacks in May 1943, and the importance of that, and the Casablanca Conference, and developments of technology from German METOX to all sorts of stuff, and closing of the air gap. And obviously, it's very important that I go and do walk the ground, which means I'll be going out in storms of the Western approaches. And
you've got a destroyer you can borrow, right? I mean, honestly.
Yeah, no, it'll be fine. I'm definitely going to go to Halifax, Nova Scotia. I think probably a trip to Iceland as well is probably required. And actually, I'm looking at, because I don't know enough about the Navy, and I don't know enough about how it operates, and I don't know enough about kind of leave and things and how that works. And, what happens when you come back from a convoy duty, or what, okay, you're a merchant ship and you just come into Liverpool, how long have you got off and what happens to you?
Yeah.
And if you're a sort of Indian sailor, do you just stay on a boat, or is a sort of lodging house in Liverpool you go to? I literally have no idea, and I'm very determined to do merchant navy as well.
Yeah.
The problem with the merchant navy is when you're trying to record it. And Chris Gattenby, who we met at We Have Waves Fest this year, and who was a harbour pilot up at Merseyside, he's been brilliant. He's been sending me all sorts of stuff. I'm really looking forward to going up to Liverpool and checking that all out, and finally going to the Western Approaches Museum. But one of the problems with the merchant navy is a lot of them were foreign sailors.
Yeah.
From India and Malaysia.
Well,
and
does the Chinese
Indonesia
cook on a ship? What is he sending his money home? How's that?
Yeah, what's
happening?
he doing? But also, they're just not keeping records.
No.
So they are the forgotten service. And obviously, there'll be petty officers and officers and stuff who've kept stuff. But I really want to make sure that the merchant navy aren't ignored, because they just are in the history of the Battle of the Atlantic, or the Atlantic War.
Isn't your other issue, though, as well, that basically every single U-boat crew, I mean, if they're keeping a diary, it's at the bottom of the sea?
Yeah, well, I'm a bit worried about that. I'm not going to lie. I need to sort of investigate. I mean, there are, they don't all die.
No, I know, but, that's...
But, yeah, I take your point.
Not an unreasonable generalisation, right?
No, it isn't. But I do know that the National World War II Museum in New Orleans have got a whole box of a guy who was a U-boat commander. And also, some of them were captured.
Yeah.
So, fingers crossed. But I need to look into this. I need to sort of get weaving on all that. But if anyone's got any good diaries, particularly, and letters, who's listening to this, and got anything, important information that they need to impart to me, I am all ears.
He's all ears, ladies and gentlemen. We said we do some questions. So we will do one question before the break, and then we'll come back and do some more. So our first question is from Paul Hicks. Good old Paul. Paul is actually a great sculptor of miniature figures, miniature wargaming figures, and first came to our attention when he sculpted you and I, Jim, in 135th. Yes. Since sculpted us in many different formats. But he asks this. You are hosting a Second World War dinner party. You can invite 6 guests. Who are they? And most importantly, what are you serving as the main meal? And we've agreed 3 people each to make it easier. Yep. So, Jim, who are your big 3?
Well, it's not necessarily the people I kind of most admire. It's people who I think would be really good conversationalists and are going to be interesting and have an interesting thing to say. So I'm going to go, obviously, for Alexander.
Ah, damn, I had him. I put him on my list.
Of course I go for Alex. Well,
right, okay.
You can't have him. He's mine.
Right, he's off that list, okay.
Okay. Then I probably would go for Lee Miller, because I think she'd be fascinating. And also be quite interesting to talk to her about, before the war as well. But as long as she's not pissed, we want to kind of during the wartime before she turned into a total alkie.
Yeah.
And then the other one I'm going to go for is Pierre Klosterman.
Oh, okay.
Because I think he'd just be fascinating.
He'd be good fun, wouldn't he, as well?
He'd be fun, and he's cool and suave, and I just think he'd be great.
All right. Well, I went tri-service.
I'll probably have a different 3 next week.
Yeah, exactly. So I went tri-service, and I wanted to go absolute classics. So I did. Yeah. I went for Harold Alexander, but I can't have him, obviously. So I'll swap him out, and I'm no longer tri-service as a result of this. I wanted Alex, Bertram Ramsey, and Stuffy Dowding. I wanted like the big 3. The big 3. The 3 men who, you know.
See, I think Dowding I think he'd be quite hard work.
I think he would be hard work, but wouldn't that be interesting in itself?
But wouldn't it be more interesting to have Keith Parr?
Maybe.
So Mary Cunningham would be great.
Anyway,
I'd be quite interested in having him.
Well, Percy Pickard, who's my new favourite person.
Oh, yeah. No, he'd be great.
Who we may come to later. So what are you serving as the main meal, Jim?
So hold on, who have you got? You say you got Ramsey.
I got Ramsey,
Dowding
and Percy Pickard. Yeah. It's a bit RAF heavy. It's no longer tri-service, but that'll do me.
You haven't got a para. You know all about them, so you don't need to ask them stuff.
I just kind of think 6 months ago, I'd have invited a para for dinner.
So what are we serving?
Well, what are we serving? I had an idea for this.
Go on, then.
They have to eat compo plus what their Batman has brought to supplement it.
And that includes fine wine because they've managed to purloin it from a cellar of a German who's committed suicide.
Exactly. So it's got to be the 10 biscuits, the 2 blocks of oatmeal.
Corned beef mash, hash.
Exactly. The meat block.
But maybe some chicken and some eggs.
Well, chicken.
Or steak from a dead cow.
Exactly. Chickens just appear, don't they?
Yeah. Always.
People eat a lot of roast chicken. Although you've got to be careful because we've only got 4 pieces of toilet paper, is the thing, each.
Yeah. And there's no guarantee when the mobile bath unit's going to reappear.
Exactly.
But you've got some fine wines from a cellar that you've purloined from a...
Yeah, whatever your Batman has managed to find a supplement. I mean, I imagine Bertram Ramsey has a very, very good... What does a naval officer have? Does he have a Batman? Isn't it that an army and an air force thing?
Don't know. See, this is why I need to do this book. I don't know.
This is it. So immediately, there's things to know about the Navy.
I have to say, do I want Pierre Klosterman or do I want Stanley Christopherson? I think actually I want Stanley Christopherson because I've never met him.
Fine. Great.
I'll swap him out.
Okay, that's all right. You can do that. You can do that.
Yeah,
Such
Stanley
is the nature of fantasy dinner parties. Did you know, though, the compo ration, on no account was the ration to be taken or accepted from wounded men. Did you know that?
I didn't know that. Why?
So that a dressing station doesn't end up unable to feed patients during the first 48 hours of an operation. That's like a gold standard rule.
Wow. I did not know that. Where did you find that out?
When I was poking around in what's in the ration pack. Because it's like you're not allowed to give away your field dressing. It's the same thing. You know, you don't use your field dressing on someone else. You use theirs on them. You could completely see that, can't you?
Yeah. It's a thing. You just don't do it. It's a line you don't cross.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that might be a good party. I think Lee Miller might find herself overwhelmingly outnumbered. You know, I mean, was Bertram Ramsey a charming man?
Yes.
Dowding wasn't.
He was funny. Dowding wasn't. It's not that Dowding lacks charm, but he was stuffy. You know, I just think he'd have been quite hard work. You know, I think he'd been a bit dry and a bit humorless. And, you know, he might have sort of done a riff about kind of the afterlife.
Yes, he'd have had his Ouija board out.
Many mansions.
Percy Pickard, though, I mean, if we got...
Yeah, he's doing the airborne bit. I do think Mary Cunningham would be a laugh as well.
Anyway, we are going to take a very quick break and then we'll be back with more of your questions. Welcome back to We Have Ways of Making You Talk, the Second World War podcast with me, Renaissance man Al Murray, and...
Stuck in the mud, James Holland.
It's a weird niche, James Holland.
Weird niche.
Weird niche. It's the Second World War, love. It's not a weird niche. It's the most important event in global history.
How the times they do a changeth.
Anyway, we've lost.
There was a time where you could say that you had an obsession with the Second World War, and you could say it with pride. Now it's a
you
weird
can look
niche.
a woman in the eye in a nightclub and tell her.
My passion is World War II. Honestly, weird niche.
I love it though. I love
really
it.
Funny. Really funny.
You know, the BBC said I'm a comedian turned historian. It's official.
But a historian of a weird niche.
Exactly. Right. So we did a question for Paul Hicks there for Fantasy Dinner Party. Excellent question. And that meal's looking good right now with the chicken sat atop, broken up biscuit kind of porridge or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'll tell you what I've got. I've been sort of wanging on about writing the present tense.
Yes.
So still sort of think about it. And I'm reading Dan Jones's new book on Henry V.
Oh, yeah.
Don't do Tudors. That's Plantagenets. That's fine. And
is that in the present?
It's in the present tense. Really good. Really enjoying it. It's great. It's like really good popular history. It's kind of authoritative, but just really engaging and really find it interesting.
Anyway, questions.
We digress.
Jonathan Cohen asks, and I'm not sure that's Jonathan Cohen who used to play the piano on Play Away, asks, or Play School, how did the Allies get intel about German manufacturing, not just of how much of what was being made, but in what factories were things being made?
Well, combination of ways, because they have pretty...
SIGINT and HUMINT, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is absolutely that. And a lot of it is worked out before the war. They know, for people in Germany, they know where things are.
Yep.
And there has been, Junkers isn't hiding what he's doing and all that kind of stuff. It's all pretty obvious. The French, general of the Army of the Air is being invited to Germany and all the rest of it. So they know, but also they're sending over photo reconnaissance planes. They know what's going on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting though, isn't it? Because before the war, you have got people going backwards and forwards, haven't you? Because there's the guy doing the elliptical wing at Heinkel who ends up at Supermarine, right?
Well, the Study Blue, which is the intelligence picture for Britain before the war, has just written to people in London saying, can you send me this book on this sort of state of British industry from 1937? And it's been sent to Germany for them.
Yeah. Is there an equivalent of Jane's warplanes? And you can buy that.
No, but it's Whitaker's Almanac and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is, though, I mean, what's quite interesting, though, is
Whitaker's Almanac is unbelievably comprehensive.
Yeah. Does it still exist?
I believe so.
Right. I mean, there's the
I've got loads
now,
of them from the 1930s. They're absolutely fantastic. Oh, that's where I got all the stuff about numbers of pigs and sheep and whatnot. And cars and things.
I mean, the thing is, what's quite interesting, though, is in between the wars, the Americans aren't allowed to look at the German economy and the German industrial setup when they're planning for bombing another country, because they're worried it might appear antagonistic or appear too aggressive. So they base their strategic bombing model on their own economy, which is why when they bomb Germany, it doesn't quite work. Their model is wrong. And their model's wrong because in between the wars, they don't want to appear aggressive to anybody. Or reveal their intentions, which I think is really, really, really interesting.
I mean,
the other thing is serial numbers on bits of equipment would tell you where they were made. So there's that Panzer IV at the Tank Museum, which was captured in North Africa. And not only did they look at the thickness of the armour and the engine and the suspension and the weaponry on it, they look at the serial numbers on every single piece of that tank.
Yes, and the Germans, they do stamps. I mean, on my MG34, there's something like 16 different inspection stamps.
And they tell you where it's made.
Yes, like the stamp on sort of silver or something.
Yeah. Once you know what those all mean, you know where stuff's being made and how it's being made. And obviously in France, the Maybach engines, for instance, for the Tigers and Panthers, aren't they, are being made in Paris. The HUMINT side of that you can get from France more easily via the Resistance. It's not such a clear picture of Germany, except aeroplanes are made in Bavaria. You know where ball bearings are made. It's like...
It just is. And you've got photos of the complex and the factories and the works and all the rest of it. So
it is interesting, though, that you do need to know this stuff. And yet, in the end, it's the Reichsbahn that's actually if you really want to gum the thing up, don't go for ball bearings, blow up the railway. Then they can't move the ball bearings around.
And get rid of their oil.
Yeah. Once you get round to thinking like that, you're going to win. I mean, right. So Ben Yarnell then asks, is James too dismissive of Wavell? You could argue he did very well with well-trained and organised forces against the Italians, but then struggled with less well-trained replacements and other requirements on his resources later in the Mediterranean.
Well, you could argue that, I suppose, but I would say in counterpoint to that he's not doing the fighting of the Italians. It's O'Connor. I would say that it's tremendous that Wavell has an ability to learn so much poetry, and that's great. But he was painfully shy, didn't speak very much, and these are not traditional attributes of the great generals. I'm not going to lie. So, yes, he had a very, very large command, but there's not an awful lot going on in that command. And this is the sort of embryonic stages of Britain's fight back. And what's going on in 1941? Well, Rommel's turned up with his 3 divisions. I mean, that shouldn't be an insurmountable problem. They've then got to deal with Greece, so you can't entirely blame him for that. Was it a good idea to put Freyberg in charge? No. Commanders-in-chief have to kind of choose their subordinates, and so that wasn't a very good move, I would say.
But, I mean, Ben's point is he did very well with well-trained and organised forces against the Italians, but that's not peer-on-peer warfare at that stage of the war, is it? Wavell has well-trained and organised forces, but the Italians are not well-trained and organised at this point.
Yeah, I mean, and also he's a bit old, he's retired. He wants to be a sort of, English academic at Cambridge.
You know what
he doesn't
he
want
is,
to be a general anymore.
The thing is I think he represents the pinnacle of the pre-war mindset, imperial warfare, policing, running columns.
Putting down Arab insurrectionists in Palestine.
Well, exactly. So he's got that mindset of when he's in Palestine, he's got irregulars running stuff, hasn't he? And the insurrection there. Then he gets into the Chindits and all this sort of stuff. So his thing is ways around it, not grasping the nettle of the fact that you're going to have to do this full scale.
This is a world of buff khaki, shorts, piff helmets.
Yeah, running
empire
columns.
Policing.
Yeah.
And
when Hobart turns up under his command, with the Desert Force, Wavell isn't really particularly receptive to Hobart's methods and basically view of the future, that this is mechanised warfare. That's what we're going to have to perfect. That's what's coming. Wavell isn't sympathetic to that. I think that he ends up Viceroy in India. I think he's the right job for him because he's not a Second World War fighting general. He's an interwar imperial general.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely spot on. He habits a world that has just disappeared in 1939, and he's not a coming man. He's just not a man to embrace this new, highly mechanized, highly technical, modern world of, it's a world of leather and buff khaki and shorts and poetry.
And poetry, exactly. Right, Stuart Furlonger. That's a great name, isn't it? He's longer than a furlong. Is there a furlongist? Stuart Furlonger says, when tankers and fuel ships sunk or struck, did these result in catastrophic oil slicks that we see today when oil tankers come to harm?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
I've never seen a tally of the environmental damage in those terms of the Second World War.
Because people didn't keep tabs on it. There was no records of it. But if you're an oil tanker and you get, you might just sit to the bottom and the oil is all contained, so that's fine. But if you hit where the oil storage is, so it goes absolutely everywhere. The main thing is that not all the tankers were struck near coastlines, in which case you didn't see it. And a lot of tankers that were struck in the second happy time, for example, in the first part of 1942, were along the Caribbean, and absolutely, it went everywhere.
It's the Exxon Valdez, isn't it? It's the sort of those sort of photos.
Yeah, because that was Gulf of Mexico, wasn't it?
Yeah, sad wading birds and seagulls slathered in
oil.
It's
just no one cared, because it's not that they don't care. It's just
literally bigger fish to fry in crude oil.
Sort of more things they're worried about. So absolutely. It's not like they've got self-sealing tanks or components that help the oil break down into different bits.
Or Greta Thunberg either.
No, there's no Greta anywhere. It's just not a consideration at all. No, it's not her time yet.
Right.
The bottom line is people just are not interested in environmental issues at this time.
Right. Roger Smith asks, what is the true purpose of Operation Jericho? The Amiens prison raid still seems to be collecting some secrecy. Do you have any thoughts on whether there may have been one person in particular the raid was designed to spring or kill? No, I don't think that's the case. I think what you have here, I think it's really interesting. This raid's amazing. So Operation Jericho takes place on the 18th of February 1944. It's an attempt by the RAF to bust open a prison, basically. So why would you do that? What's going on? And there's a whole, the thing is, there's a tangle of stuff around this. 258 prisoners escape. German guards killed, along with 102 prisoners who were also killed. Lots of escapees were later recaptured. This is a thing that's got MI6 and MI9 thumbprints on it.
I think it's also one of those things that they're doing just because they can. And it's another of these things where it just undermines German authority, makes them more paranoid. Comparatively small beer in the big scheme of things. 9 bombers and 9 mosquitoes and 12 fighters.
It's shock and awe, basically.
Yeah.
And it's also a way of saying to the resistance, hello, we are helping. We are being useful. And what's quite interesting, though, is there's a sort of ratchet where the resistance say, there's a load of our guys in here. There's a bloke called Ponchadier who's saying there's a load of guys in here and we're worried that they're going to all be executed. There's a change in texture for the messages from the réseau where they're basically starting to say, we're running out of time, you've got to do this. And really, the RAF are kind of into doing this. This is what's interesting. And the people involved in planning it. So Percy Pickard, who's this absolutely amazing...
He's total legend, isn't he? Isn't he the subject of that amazing
Target
film that's
for
made
tonight? He plays yes, exactly right. So he plays the lead in that.
Thank you, Skipper.
Exactly. He plays the lead in that. He's got a fictional name in the film. But he's like a legend of... Smokes a pipe. He's a legend of Wellingtons. He's on the Bruneval raid. He spent time training Czechs. There's a really brilliant story. He's in a plane with a Czech. The bloke's a terrible pilot. In the end, he goes, well, you've got 2,000 hours in your logbook. What the bloody hell's going on? And the bloke goes, observer. He's not a pilot. But Pickard trains him anyway. And he's a fantastic chap. 3 DSOs. He's ditched in nautical minefields and had to be rescued. He's one of those people, right?
Yeah,
absolutely. And what's really interesting is when the raid comes along, his attitude is, well, it's just a problem to solve. We have here a model of the prison, which you're all going to study in detail shortly. You will notice that the prison itself is in the form of a cross, and that its east and west ends are small triple buildings, which, according to information, are the quarters of the Nazi prison guards. The second 6 aircraft would have pranged these quarters. I don't suppose all the Nazis will be inside at once, but we're sure to get some of them, and it'll all add to the general confusion and give the prisoners a better chance. So he's just like, we're going to do this. Their main concern in the planning is they've got to fly slow enough for the bombs to work. If they fly at more than 240 miles an hour, they're worried that the bomb casing will shatter and then the bomb won't go off. And they're all saying, the people around, the idea of going to these resistance guys' rescue was simple enough. The very thought of it sent a thrill through all of us. We could see the exact task of breaking the prison open was going to be difficult, blah, 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 blah. But they say after 4 years of war, of doing everything possible to destroy life, here we are going to use our skill to save it. It was a grand feeling. And every pilot left the briefing room prepared to fly into the walls rather than fail to breach them. There was nothing particularly unusual in it as an operational sortie, but because of this life-saving aspect, it was to be one of the great moments of our lives. So the crews are into it, the RAF are into it, they're into it because it shows how cool they are.
But isn't the footage of him doing it?
I think there is, yeah.
Yeah, those mosquitoes going over the channel at kind of literally 0 feet. And they're so fast. They're like, nearly 400 miles an hour. It's absolutely incredible.
But it's about symbolism.
Yeah, I don't like people constantly kind of looking for kind of further, deeper meaning to things which don't require them. No, there isn't an Enigma machine there. They're doing it because they can. And the outlay's not huge for the potential rewards. And I think it's really important in the February 1944, when you know that you're just about to harness the resistance, it's really important to show the resistance that there is some sort of coordination between what they're doing over in France and what's going on in London and the sort of centre of command. And if you've got a prison in Amiens, which is within a stone's throw of southern England, and it's stuffed full of resistant types, and you can get them out, you're showing them that you haven't forgotten them, that you're there. They might feel very small in their little forest, but actually there's the powerful friends of sort of bigger things are in play here. And, there's a tragedy that Percy Pickard gets killed, but in wartime terms, it's not a massive commitment for quite a lot of potential reward.
So Rob Lyman, a friend of the show, Rob Lyman's written a good little volume about this. This is what he says. The mauling that most Réseau had suffered at the hands of German counter-espionage during the last 6 months of 1943 directly challenged MI6's ability to undertake what were increasingly important, even strategic intelligence activities in France. This was the rationale for the request by the Secret Intelligence Service, MI6, to the Air Ministry to consider an attack on Amiens prison. To protect their sources, the Air Ministry was told that the raid had been requested directly by the French resistance to allow a certain number of incarcerated resistants to escape, almost certain and possibly imminent execution. This part, at least, was true, but the detail provided in the request was made up. The raid was undertaken because MI6 had been asked to see what it could do to help its friends in the resistance. MI6 duly passed the query on to the RAF. In the transmission of this request, a degree of obfuscation was deployed. MI6 didn't have specific agents in the jail, nor ones high-ranking enough to warrant a rescue mission. Although, as we have seen, MI9 did. So there are some MI9 people in there who are worth springing. Instead, it was considered by those in the SIS who argued for it to be a matter of honour. The Allies were asking French civilians to risk their lives in the cause of liberation. The very least they could do was help them when they found themselves at mercy of a blood-soaked regime that killed its captives without mercy or due process. And that's it. You've got Gilbert Renault in there, the Remy, but you've got various people in there. The point is doing it. This isn't a main event, but this is a shock and awe show of force. And it's easy to do because it's on the French coast. You'll find it. You're not doing this in the French interior where that will be a much more difficult thing to pull off, right?
Yeah.
Coming under the radar, job done.
Yeah.
So there we go. Rob's book is very good, by the way. It's,
it is. It's really good.
And it's a sufficiently slender volume as well to dash through. Right. Okay, Duncan Parry now asks, whose diary is missing about the events of 1944? Who do you wish had kept one?
Wow, I wish Alexander had kept one. That would have been good. Miles Dempsey would have been quite good, wouldn't it?
You know what? That's exactly who I was thinking.
He did keep one, didn't he, I think, but he burned it.
And Tracy Dalton asks, which Second World War leader are you most like?
Well, I like to think I'm most like Jim Gavin, brave as a lion, clear-headed. No, I don't know.
I think I'm Roy Urquhart, muddled in a panic and hiding in an attic. I have so much sympathy for that man. I really do. I really do.
Not Windy Gale.
Not Windy Gale, no. There's who you wish you were like and there's who you probably like.
Who you're probably like, yeah, exactly. I'm probably like Lee Mallory.
Brilliant. Well, thanks everyone for listening to the All-Rounder and the Weird Niche Man.
Renaissance man, weird niche man. Yeah, okay.
It's been a pleasure.
I'll wear my weird niche moniker with pride.
I think this could end up a T-shirt.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for listening. We will see you again soon. We hope you've enjoyed all the stuff we've been running through. The Guernsey stuff should be with you quite soon, I think.
Yeah, we've got more series to come. We're doing one on the SAS in France.
Yes.
And I've been boning up for the Hurtcombe Forest, which has been fascinating.
And don't forget, Casino 44 is in all the good bookshops and the bad ones and online. As so is Arnhem Black Tuesday. You know what? I think they sit very nicely on a bookshelf together, don't they, Jim?
I felt a little touch of pride when I saw that in the Salisbury Waterstones window.
Fantastic. Right. Thanks, everybody. We will see you again soon. Don't forget, if you don't want to listen to the adverts, you can always subscribe to our Apple channel, Officer Class.
Yes.
We have ways to make you talk, or become a Patreon, where you will find out what's going to be happening with
oodles of perks.
We Have Ways Fest V for Victory, putting the fun into fun for next year. Anyway, we'll see you very, very soon. Cheerio. Bye-bye.
Cheerio.
5 bitter months of fighting, 4 bloody battles, 1 legendary campaign. Casino 44 by me, James Holland, is the astonishing story of one of the most brutal and hard-fought battles of the Second World War in Italy, told in the moment and from the perspective of those who lived, fought and died there. Casino 44, out now in hardback, ebook and audio.